Good, and thank you for everybody joining our TATT chat for this afternoon. I guess we've all gone through different variations of rain here today, and it poured in Anderson probably about 30 minutes ago, and hopefully it was not as bad as our emergency management people said it was going to be. So I'm crossing my fingers that that where I was, it just was not an isolated situation. But as many of you know, that our TATT chats have become quite popular, and I think more people are coming in right as we start our program. But as chairman attended at the top and a big fan of what we do regionally, I want to appreciate Dean and his team for what they've done over the last 12 months exactly almost with keeping us connected because of the challenges of the pandemic. And today I get the opportunity to introduce our guest speaker, not only because he's representing my healthcare system at ANMED, but just because I think Dean and his team have brought to us a timely topic. And I want to introduce Mike Hedgecock, ANMED healthcare system. I see my friend John Miller, who's my former CEO at ANMED, and I happen actually to be the chair of this organization, but I'm also the chair of our healthcare system, ANMED. So we're looking forward to Michael giving us a presentation today. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Michael.
Thank you so much. And I really appreciate having the opportunity today to speak to this group. And I actually look forward to the day when we can do it in person. I think that will be fantastic. And hopefully we're getting one step closer each day to that. Just a little bit about myself before I kind of get into this. I've been in the field of mental health for about 27 years now, and I'm very excited to be in the role that I'm in at ANMED. Been here since 2020 in January. And really the goal was to really try to start building the geriatric side of things for psychiatric patients. And we're starting to have some success in that area, which I'm really excited about. Definitely a need for the community. And as you may know, may not know, our adult unit stays full all the time. So we treat all sorts of disorders, bipolar, generalized anxiety, depression. On the geriatric side, a lot of folks with neurocognitive disorders, dementias, that come with a lot of behavioral disturbance. So a lot of times what we're doing is looking at medications that can help them and help kind of reduce some of that agitation that they may be experiencing. But today, and just one other side note, I am a Gamecock. Came down from New York to run track and cross country at the University of South Carolina. Did my undergraduate there. Stayed on to do my graduate degree in rehabilitation counseling, which is in the School of Medicine at USC, and then have an educational specialist degree in counselor education as well. I'm a licensed professional counselor by the state of South Carolina, and also certified in addictions counseling. So certainly areas that are near and dear to me. And certainly just want to bring some basic things that I've seen in the past year, because this is about the time, about 1 year ago, when we really started to experience COVID and things shutting down, things changing fairly drastically, fairly quickly. So it really forced a lot of people to do things differently, operationally, for sure. So I just want to give some typical basic things that everyone can do. And I'll go through these. I have some notes that will keep me on task. And also Dean sent me a few questions that I thought would be appropriate as well. And I'll try to answer those at the end. And then certainly if anyone has any questions, I will be happy to answer those as well. So really some basic needs, and I see this quite often. We need to drink appropriate amounts of water or juice. We need to eat appropriately, good diets, and we need to get appropriate sleep. One of the big things that we see here when we see patients come into the hospital is very often they come in because they've not been sleeping. We see a lot of patients that will sleep 1 to 2 hours a night, and you give that a few days and you're going to deteriorate over time. So basically depriving yourself of any of those basic needs will really compromise your ability to do your own work, to stay on task, to be a good family member at your house, be a good husband, be a good wife, be a good partner, because you're going to be short fused quite often. One of the big things that we talk about just in treatments in general, we use a term called HALT. It's a real simple term, HALT, and it's don't get yourself too hungry, too angry, too lonely, or too tired. Any one of those things can really be detrimental. And if you think about it, just in your general life, if you're ever really hungry and you're trying to do a task, it's really hard to stay on task. So sometimes you got to be able to step aside and say, I need to go take care of myself and do the things that are appropriate. Because if you don't, then you just start to spiral down. You need to give yourself breaks throughout the day. One of the big things we talk about, even with patients that come into the unit, sometimes they haven't slept in quite some time. So for them to get extra sleep, that's often appropriate for them to take naps during the day. But things for you to do, certainly that could be helpful. Sometimes you just need to kind of step away from the desk. I know there's been more people working from home this year. There's more kids doing work from the kitchen table. And sometimes you need to change the scenery. So if you can, and when you can, take a walk. If you can get outside, that's even better. You can listen to music. You can read a book. You can talk with a friend. Any of those things just to kind of divert your attention to what you're doing can really kind of bring you back to task in a fresher mindset. One of the great things, and I think you guys are doing it today, but connecting with your colleagues. That's tremendous. You need to talk to your colleagues. You need to receive support from one another. We've been in this infectious outbreak, and what it's done, it's really isolated people. And with isolation, that causes a lot of fear and a lot of anxiety. So what you need to do is you need to listen to others, find out what they're doing. What are you doing differently? You can incorporate new things into your daily routine that maybe you weren't doing a year ago, and now you are doing them. I think one of the big things while we've been in this pandemic is being able to communicate constructively. You communicate to your colleagues in a clear and optimistic manner. It's always good to compliment each other. Like if you come to a meeting and you find out someone's doing something different than what you're doing, you might put that to use right away, and it may be something that's just been missing from your own team. Compliments can be very powerful for one another, and they can be very motivating for each other. So something to kind of keep in touch with while you're doing this. Problem solving it's a professional skill, and it can provide a real feeling of accomplishment. I think it's always good if you go to your boss or supervisor and you feel like things maybe aren't going the way you want them to go. But if you come to that supervisor or boss with a string of things like, maybe we can try things this way, or maybe we can try things that way, versus just coming to them with a bunch of complaints. If you come to them with a bunch of constructive thoughts, ideas, things that could be worthwhile, advantageous, that's a much better way to approach things. I think one of the big things that we need to do, and we need to continue to do it until we get out of this pandemic, is to connect with our family, connect with loved ones, whether it's your partner, your wife, your husband. They're our anchors. They are our anchors of support. If they don't know what's going on with us, then how can they help us? you need to share, you need to stay connected with them. I think this past year, especially for some of the geriatric population, they have felt very isolated. They've been shut in a lot of nursing homes, a lot of assisted living facilities. They've not let visitors in. And for a lot of people, they don't understand what's happened. Why can't I see my loved ones? Why can't my son and daughter come see me? And I think we really haven't even begun to start to see the repercussions of what the pandemic's going to do for our society just moving forward. But I think one of the big things, obviously, is staying connected. And also just being able to respect the differences of people. Some people like to talk. They want to come home from work and they want to tell you everything they've done that day. And some people need some time alone. Sometimes people walk in the front door and they need to decompress. They need to put their stuff down, maybe go take a shower, maybe watch some TV. But knowing that you can respect the differences, not only in yourself, but in your colleagues, and being able to ask for that space. I think a big thing that we need to do is we need to stay updated. We need to rely on trusted resources in the community, going to meetings, participating in meetings, staying informed of different situations, different plans that are being outlaid. I think those are things that will help kind of reduce anxiety, reduce stress. I think ANMED has done a fantastic job in the last year. They've done weekly emails about just the number of patients in the hospital, how many COVID positive patients we've had. Now they're giving more information on vaccinations. So I think it's been a fantastic way to keep a lot of people kind of in the loop, what's happening, what we're doing. So it really helps reduce a lot of your anxiety when you can stay connected. I think a big thing that we all need to do, and it's hard sometimes because we get sort of gravitated to it, but is limiting, media exposure. There's so much information, there's so much wrong information that's out there. A lot of times the graphic imagery can become very worrisome. A lot of the messages that are sent to us can increase your stress. And it may over time just reduce your effectiveness on how to handle things. I'm sure you guys all remember when 9/11 occurred, being from New York. That was a devastating time for me, knowing I had family members working in the Twin Towers. Were they at work at the time? Were they not? And then just the amount of exposure that the media had, and just replaying the planes crashing over and over again. I had to find myself doing different things, watching different things on TV, because over time you're going to experience a lot of PTSD, even though you've not experienced it yourself being there, but just over time, all the media exposure. So just be mindful of what you watch on TV and the information that you're receiving. I think a big thing for just mental health in general are just self check-ins that you can do with yourself, just kind of monitoring yourself over time, and watch for signs and symptoms of depression or any stress that may be coming up, prolonged sadness, difficulty sleeping, intrusive memories, feeling hopeless. If you start to feel any of these things, I would certainly encourage you to reach out to a peer, someone that you feel close to or close with. And also you can always reach out to your supervisor. A lot of companies have access to EAP programs, and that's typically a free resource to you. And don't ever hesitate to do that. If you don't have access to an EAP program, certainly getting involved with an outpatient clinician, therapist in the community, just to kind of walk you through things. Sometimes just being able to have a sounding board to kind of run some of your thoughts, your ideas by, can be very beneficial. And it can also help you kind of stay grounded and make sure that you're on the right path. So I think one of the big things to kind of just reiterate real quickly is self-monitor yourself. And also pace yourself. You think about it, we've been involved with this for really a year now. Nobody knew how long it was going to be, and we're still not out of it, certainly. And hopefully we will be with the number of vaccinations. And I think as long as people continue to do what they need to, we could start stepping out of this hopefully sooner. But just to pace yourself throughout the day. You don't have to do it all at once. Make sure you have regular check-ins. I think this meeting that you guys are doing today is fantastic. Check in with your colleagues, check in with your friends, check in with your family members, especially ones that can't get out as much as they once did. Make sure someone's reaching out to them to make sure they're doing okay. You work in partnerships with other people, work in teams. I think when you start to isolate yourself and you work solo, you start working more hours, and you get yourself into a stuck routine, and you don't realize actually what you're doing until you actually pull yourself out of it. And I think now for a lot of people, especially ones that are now working from home, now your home office is in your home, and it can just be that much easier to say, well, I'm just going to go check my email. It's 8 o'clock at night. I know, hopefully nothing's on fire, but what if it is? And then next thing you know, it's 11 o'clock and you're still working on things. And before you know it, it's past midnight and you're still trying to get a good night's rest so you can get up the next day and do it all over again. So, keeping monitored, kind of time limits on your day, making sure you're taking care of yourself in that way. Try brief relaxation techniques. Deep breathing can be very beneficial. Stress management breaks, peer consultation or supervision. Like I said, reaching out to people that are in your field or maybe doing something different, picking their brain, finding out what they're doing differently could be very, very beneficial to your own work. And really seeking out accurate information, because that will help you make better decisions over time. And you focus on things that you can control. There's so much of what's happened in the last year that's so out of our control, but focus on what you can change. And there's going to be times when you have to accept that there's things that you can't change. I think ways to kind of just continue to support one another, just have an open, transparent communication, because that builds trust with people that you're closest to. It reduces fears. It builds morale within your workforce, and it really sustains a workforce. And as we all know, we've had to really develop a very flexible workforce in the past year. People are actually having to do things that maybe they've never done before. Asking people to work from home. That's never been, kind of an ongoing issue. It might have been for a short period of time, whether it was bad weather like today. I know there was a lot of schools, probably some businesses that closed due to the tornado risk, but you might work a day or two home, and that would be it. But now this has been an extended period of time where people have had to change their routine. They're not getting up, getting out of bed, out the door like in normal times. So, doing things differently and learning to be flexible. And basically, I think, doing one of the things that you guys are doing today, giving people the opportunities to have that time to collaborate with other professionals, other colleagues. And because what it does, it helps you lead in different directions and really be innovative in your thought process. But I think, I'd like to just finish with this, and then I'll answer some of these questions that Dean sent, but just ultimately remember to take time for yourself. That is huge. And know when you're getting to that point where it's kind of like, I might need a mental health day so I can kind of recharge my battery so I can get back to it. Because I know if I don't, I'm going to start having a lot of difficulty with my colleagues, with people I work with, and it's going to deteriorate my own mental health. I'm going to find myself being shorter with people when they ask me a question, or even with my own family or children. So it's something to be kind of mindful of. Ask for space if you need it. I think that's always hard for people, but I think it's a time where people need to know like how you operate. Like I said earlier, seek outside help. It's very beneficial. I know a lot of people would even lean on church, clergy, whether it's your minister or pastor. They can be a great place to start. But I know often they become overwhelmed with just the sheer number of mental health. I have a good friend of mine who's a pastor of a church, and we would run together quite often, and he would tell me, I never knew just the extent of just mental health, substance abuse, marital discord, strife, that would land on my plate within the church. And he wound up going ahead and hiring a therapist for the church. So because he knew when he could take people so far, he knew there was a point where he had to hand this off and give it to someone that was more professionally trained to deal with the real hardcore mental health issues that they were experiencing. I think the big thing, just reaching out and making sure family is taken care of. Make sure you're talking to them, talking to the loved ones that are in nursing homes or assisted living. I feel as though these next several months, we're going to see some of the deterioration over the last year for a lot of people. We do know prior to the pandemic, mental health is a tough service, and there's a huge need in the community, and there's not enough providers to really provide the care and the support that people actually need. So we knew going into the pandemic, there was a huge need for people to have these services. And then you throw in the pandemic where it's difficult to receive services. Some services closed down. A lot of people were doing, telepsych services. Some people don't have access to a phone or the internet. So they get sort of left out in the cold, and hopefully they can, hold on. But that's when we start seeing a lot of folks come into the emergency department looking for help. And I think, that's going to be something that we continue to see down the road. And hopefully, as we start to climb out of this, we start to see more people getting the help that they need and reaching out for the help. And just, I think everyone, I can't ever say, mental illness, it does not discriminate against age, race, color. And we see all walks of life. And we see children typically starting at age 4, and we see them up to 100. So all ages, all walks of life, and you just never know what someone may be dealing with behind closed doors. But I will just go through a few of these questions, if that's okay, Dean, because I think they're very appropriate. So one of the questions was, I think in the article that I wrote, I talked about some statistics just in general, and this is straight from NAMI, 1 in 4 people are affected by a mental illness. So I always keep that in context when I'm speaking in a group of folks, who may be dealing with, a major depressive episode or bipolar disorder or generalized anxiety. There's always going to be people that you come in contact with. So I know the CDC has recently come out with some new numbers. They're saying now 2 in 5 people since the pandemic. And it's definitely considerably elevated. There was an article in JAMA 2 months ago, and it talked about, and this was mostly dealing with generalized anxiety disorders and major depressive episodes. So we're definitely going to continue to see an increase in people needing help, and certainly the numbers are going to continue to rise. I think the next question, kind of personal tips for maintaining mental health and how to balance doing what you need to do for yourself with job expectations and other responsibilities. You know, I think one of the big things is, you know, making sure that you take time for yourself. You've got to do that. If you can't do that, I tell people all the time, if you can't take care of yourself, you can't take care of anyone else. So just knowing yourself and knowing what you need to do. Obviously, seeking treatment. I'm a huge advocate of outpatient counseling, seeking out whether it's a therapist in the community. I think that would be very, very, very beneficial. And also, don't try to do too much. I think often we try to do too much all the time, and that's just going to end us up in a situation where it's going to put us into trouble. I think the next question, warning signs for a staff member who might be struggling, especially with kids at home. I think obviously looking for irritability, if they start to isolate, if they're not caring as much with their job, especially with children or kids, if you start to see a decrease in grades, if you start to see that maybe once upon a time they were very meticulous with how they dressed, how they looked, how they combed their hair, and now all of a sudden they could really care less. Those would be sort of red flags to look out for. And then those in high risk jobs, obviously healthcare, huge high risk. Teachers, another one. I think there was a great article in the New York Times on Sunday, and it talked about just the number of nurses that are going to retire this year due to the amount of stress that they've experienced. And it's, you know, it's got pros and cons. You're losing some long-term, very, very knowledgeable staff, and then you're replacing them with newer grads. So it comes with some good and some bad. And same with teachers. I think there's going to be probably a large exodus of teachers. And then it's, you know, the teachers that are leaving they have a lot of experience. And it's hard to really replace good teachers with great experience. And so the last question was some examples of things that ANMED has done for employees. I think ANMED's done a fantastic job just recognizing staff over the past year. The community has stepped up tremendously. The amount of meals, lunches, dinners that not only community organizations, church groups, different restaurants have donated to staff working around the clock. I think that's been tremendous. I think the leadership at ANMED has really done a good job. They've had T-shirts made for staff. They've had special days where there's cookies or snacks that are dropped off. Like I mentioned earlier, just the sheer number of emails that administration has done to keep staff in the loop. I think those all go really, really far when you're looking at keeping staff happy, keeping burnout at a lower rate. And so, because that's one of the big things that staff are going to look at. Was I being recognized? Because a lot of staff were being put in situations that they've never been put in before. Just the sheer number, you know, nurses, they go into the profession to help people. And when they saw the number of patients that have died, that's very difficult to contend with. So it's been certainly a challenging year, but I think it's going to be a year that when we come out of it, we're going to be a lot stronger. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Yes, Michael, thank you so much. It's I think really helpful. We a lot of times, and I think everyone here on the call has experienced over the last year, just having to deal with a lot of the things. And I will say a lot of what you said is very basic, but yet at the same time, it's things that sometimes we don't necessarily recognize the value or importance of them. I love your HALT line, hungry, angry, lonely and tired. I think that fits very well. And the information piece, I know that's been one of the elements through our work that we've tried to do, is just keep people informed of what's going on. And that provides you a level of comfort, like you said, to kind of be, more in the know than left in the dark. We do have a question that I'm sure almost everyone can relate to is, okay, we wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, our mind begins to race with thoughts of things we need to do. How do you address that? Do you get up and take notes or try to fight going back to sleep? I mean, what do you do when you just, your mind is working overtime,
Sure.
and yet your body, you need to get some more sleep?
That's right. Yeah, I think that's probably a very common theme for a lot of people. Of course, prior to going to bed, I always tell people, because we're just so attached to our devices these days, that you got to put those down so your mind can start to shut down and start to rest and get into a restful state. I think very often we go right back to our phone, or, and of course, make sure that your phone is on silent so you're not getting text messages throughout the night or getting email alerts throughout the night, because then your mind starts wandering again, like, oh my gosh, what if that's my boss asking me a question at 3 a.m.? I should answer him or her, and so it's like I get into this kind of stuck place that next thing you know, it's like I've got to wake up in 3 hours and I'm exhausted. But I think, anything you can do as far as relaxation goes. I know some people go back to old school stuff like warm milk. A lot of times thinking of a relaxation, whether it's the beach or the mountains, and having that place that you can go to in your mind that is a kind of a soothing place. There's a lot of things you can do. There's relaxation sort of music that you can listen to. ASMR is another sort of kind of whispering, quiet kind of thing that some people do go to if they can't sleep. So there's a lot of techniques. Obviously, taking it one step further is prescribed medications that do last longer throughout the night. Certainly want to stay away from that. But I think a big thing too is, and something to be mindful of, alcohol intake. Whenever you drink heavy amounts, and it doesn't even have to be that much, you have a difficult time getting into stage 4 REM sleep. And that's your most effective stage of sleep for restfulness. If you ever talk to somebody that's a heavy drinker, they say, I drink about 6 beers a night, but I sleep about 12 hours, but I feel exhausted. The reason is they never get into that last stage of REM sleep that's the most effective, that can help them get the most rest. So just knowing, obviously limiting caffeine intake as well, but as well as the alcohol intake, because that can play into your sleeping patterns. And of course, if you take a nap during the day, that's always going to affect your nighttime sleep ritual. I think the best thing is to have a routine of sleep. Obviously, I know, Dean, maybe you and I spoke about this, but I know a lot, and even a lot of my friends, since working from home this past year, their office now is also in their bedroom. So you start to identify your sleep with your work. So like if you can move the computer out of that room, that would be a great start, whether it's at the kitchen table or the dining room table or another part of the house. So you're not identifying work and sleep together, if that makes sense.
And Michael, we have a question of, define exactly what REM sleep means. What is that?
Well, I mean, that's the rapid eye movement sleep. And there's 4 different stages of sleep that we all have. And like I said, the last stage of that sleep pattern is where we get the most rest. And just that alcohol affects you getting into that. So you might not ever feel really rested if you're sort of a heavy drinker.
So last question, and then we'll let you go, because we could certainly, talk on this for a while. But, one of the challenges with the pandemic for sure is that there have been, for lack of a better term, winners and losers. I mean, there have been people who have been incredibly affected personally, families with losses, job losses, things like that. And then there have been others whose businesses have done very well. They've been able to, have probably greater success in their job or other things because of the type of field or whatever. You talked a little bit about the 9/11, situation, and kind of feeling a guilt or a pains for friends and things who were part of that. How do you deal with, if you're one of the folks who is, your business has done well or you've been successful? How do you cope with kind of that guilt feeling of, well, I know others are, not in this same situation? What do you do to overcome that guilt element?
Yeah, I think, one of the big things, and for me, I'll tell you what I did back then. And I think what people can do now is, if you can always give back to the community. You can give to those that are less fortunate, for sure. But what I did, I felt so helpless, certainly being in South Carolina, being 800 miles away. But what I did was I took my staff and we went to the Red Cross, and we all became trained in dealing with trauma and basically crisis sort of trauma counselors. And so we were able to go up and help a lot of people up in the New York, New Jersey area that were affected. So you felt like you were giving back. You couldn't do, something so far away, and you start to feel like I'm helpless. I can't move forward. But I think the guilt piece of that is, if you can do something for someone else, for another company, for another business, to pick them up. I know for a lot of people, people that own small businesses, shopping at their businesses, making sure you're reaching out and you're giving people all the information that they need to know to go to this business, especially if it's a small restaurant or a local business that they need all the help they can get. So I think the more people that can get in there to give back, the better for them.
Great. Well, thank you again, Michael. This has been really helpful. And I know this is an issue, historically, there's always a kind of a stigma around mental health, but the reality is, you said 40%, I would say it's probably closer to 100% of us, have struggled during this last year with just the difference of life. And I think knowing that that's okay, is something that I think that's important. And I hope as we move out of this, that, that stigma around people having to take care of, themselves. And I loved what you said, that if you're not taking care of yourself, you can't take care of others. And I think whether you're a parent or a supervisor or whatever, I think there's truth to that. So thank you so much for your tips. And Erica, if you could put his article from last week in the chat. Michael wrote a good article in our last e-newsletter with some of the information he talked about today. So we will certainly share that. So Michael, again, thank you so much for being with us.
Thanks so much, Dean. I appreciate it.
All right, so I have a couple quick things. The first one, and I did this for a few of the folks who were on before we started the formal program. We are very fortunate to have a new intern with us for 6 weeks from Wade Hampton High School as part of the program through the Greenville Chamber. And Erica, I've lost the name of the program if you want to share it with me. But anyway, I'll introduce Gracie Sandage. Gracie is a senior at Wade Hampton. And Gracie, if you would say a couple words about yourself, and welcome to the team, and we're glad to have you. And it is Launch Greenville. Thank you, Erica.
Hi, everyone. My name is Gracie Sandage. I'm a senior at Wade Hampton High School, like Mr. Dean said, and I'm really excited to be working with 10 at the Top.
Great. Gracie is the 4th intern we've had through the Launch Greenville program, and we have been very fortunate. All the folks we've had are great. It's a great program that they have here in Greenville to try to give young folks in high school some in-office experience. Right now, Gracie is working from home, but we have confidence that the last 2 or 3 weeks she'll get a little bit of that in-office experience. So if your company is, whether it's through Greenville, or I'm sure there's other programs, I know there are a lot of college programs through Furman and Anderson University and others, USC Upstate. So, you know, hiring interns, I think, is a great valuable experience, both for the intern, but also for you as a company and a business. So Erica has put the page on here, the information for Launch Greenville. So please, you know, participate in those and consider engaging with young professionals. And Gracie, we're really glad to have you here with us. All right, a couple other things I wanted to mention. One thing I'm really excited about that we will be starting in April is some informal networking, calling it Reconnect Fridays. So the plan is starting on the 9th of April for every Friday for the next several weeks after that. I'm going to invite partners to come, and we're going to have coffee and donuts in the large community room here at the Park 37 complex. We're going to limit it to about between 10 and 15, 20 people max. And the agenda is just to reconnect, and we will be safe. We'll distance and everything. But, you know, as we get back into the ability to see people in person, we did one with about 8 or 10 nonprofit leaders a couple of weeks ago, and it really felt good to be able to have that semblance of normalcy. And we're going to have 10 at the top board members who will be part of that and will serve as our hosts. So look for that information coming from me in the next week or so, and everybody is invited to be part of that. It will be a first come, first serve. Like I said, we're going to limit it to about 15 to 20 max people, but I'm excited about that. Those Friday morning kind of informal networking coming back together soon. In addition, from an event standpoint, we've got a professional planners meeting coming up in the next couple weeks. We also have a senior issues meeting and some other things going on. So Erica has put that in the chat, the link, if you want to check out our upcoming events. And then lastly, our next TATT chat will be on April 1st. We have Dr., and I hope I say this right, Sakia from Prisma Health, who is going to give us an update on the holistic upstate health, what's going on, how things are going with vaccines. So we appreciate that. She spoke at one of our events a number of years ago, pre-pandemic, and I've seen her on TV and other things. So she's a great person who will give us a healthcare update. So Erica has put that in the Zoom as well. So with that, again, thank you all for being with us today. And Justine, I'll turn it over to you to do our county updates, and they fit very well with our theme of mental health from today.
Yes, hey everyone. We thought we'd continue on the mental health theme, as we had somebody that volunteered to be in the county updates, which is amazing because I'm always looking for people. Hint, hint, hint. Okay, we'll do Lawrence, Asa Briggs with Prisma Health, and then Pickens County, Jessica Barney with Pickens County. Let's start out with you, Mr. Briggs.
Well, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Briggs, and I'm actually the program director for Rural Psychiatric Services at Prisma Healthcare. So thank you all for having me. I am a graduate of Clemson University. I think the first presenter was a Gamecock, so I wanted to make sure that I did not disappoint my Tiger fans without mentioning Clemson, so go Tigers. I'm a native South Carolinian, graduate of Woodruff High School, class of 1997, graduate of Vanderbilt and Yale University. So coming back to South Carolina to be able to provide psychiatric services and solutions for individuals in Lawrence and Oconee County is a dream come true. And so what my job is to integrate psychiatry into the primary care model. So we're taking psychiatry out of its traditional silo and putting it into the primary care practices, which is where 95 to 100% of our patients that are in rural communities are accessing their care in the primary care setting. And so Prisma is leveraging my expertise in contextualized models of care and embedding psychiatric or specialty services within clinics in those areas. So now we've been in Lawrence since August of last year. My goal was to get up and running in February of 2020, but due to COVID-19, we were unable to do that. So there were a couple of things that precluded us from getting up and running. So now we are there. I provide psychiatric services for our adult population, and Dr. Kay McGinty, which is our child and adolescent psychiatrist, is providing psychiatric services for our kids and young adults. And so we're excited. We are in those communities 4 days out of the week, Monday and Tuesdays. I am in the Oconee County area in Seneca at the Mountain Lakes Family Medicine Clinic specifically. And then on Thursdays and Fridays, I am in the Lawrence Family Medicine practice, along with a number of great providers there in Lawrence, South Carolina. And I think Justin, who is the CEO, Justin Benfield, wanted me to send his hellos and also talk to you guys about Healthy Lawrence County Healthy Initiative that we're working on. And so my job and my position within Prisma Healthcare was sort of birthed out of the desire to have healthy communities and looking at the patient from a holistic perspective. And so one of the most important cogs in the middle of the wheel that is oftentimes not talked about a lot is mental health. And so what we wanted to do is, in addition to providing services, we wanted to help communities, specifically those communities that did not have access to healthcare, to begin conversations about health, and in particular their mental health care. And so we're doing that in ways that are very non-threatening. I think in particular, doing it in ways that destigmatize mental health for individuals who are in rural communities. And so there's telehealth component to that. So individuals who don't want to come into the clinic to talk to me, I'm offering telehealth as an option. And so it's just a great overall good program, and I'm excited to be able to lead this initiative, and hopefully we can spread this throughout the entire upstate communities. So with that, I will turn it back over to Mrs. Allen, and thank you guys again for having me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Briggs. I'm sorry. I think the last thing I Googled about you you weren't quite there yet, so I apologize. Would you please email me or put in the chat some links to the health initiative program, and then also how people could get connected, how they could get their children in with those 2 clinics that you talked about?
Yeah, I certainly will.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you.
And Pickens County has a neat new program too around mental health initiatives. And so Jessica Varney is going to talk about that. Jessica? Okay, so you're not muted, but we can't hear you. Maybe your system speakers, like if you click on the mute, there's a little arrow next to the mute, and there's a way you can select your microphone. We'll try that.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good. Thank you. And I'm so grateful for the opportunity to speak today. Very happy to hear the practical ways that Dr. Hitchcock shared that we can all care for our mental health, because we know that's very important. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to share about this new initiative we have going on in Pickens County. Pickens County has been selected as one of 10 sites from across the country to participate in SAMHSA's Service Members, Veterans, and their Families Crisis Intercept Mapping Project this spring. And it's the first county in South Carolina to do so. Pickens County's team consists of members in leadership at the local, regional, and state level. and it's made up of both military and civilian participants. This diverse team is necessary because caring for service members, veterans, and their families who are experiencing an emotional crisis requires a comprehensive and coordinated approach. Most military veterans do not access healthcare through the VA system and instead seek community care settings. And unfortunately, many community providers do not consider themselves culturally competent about military and veteran populations. So there's a real opportunity here. During the time period surrounding an episode of acute care, individuals are at an increased risk for dying by suicide. The crisis intercept map for suicide prevention, which is what we are building right now, will help our community strengthen the delivery of evidence-based suicide prevention policies and practices during that time of increased risk. So within our community crisis system, there are 4 key intercept points: first contact, acute care, care transitions, and ongoing treatment and recovery support. Each of these points provides an opportunity for diverting at-risk individuals to receive the care that they need. This initiative fits very well within the South Carolina Governor's Challenge and the County Council's resolution from last September that named September 2020 as Veterans Suicide Prevention Month. Our county team has been working diligently, and we are going to have our second module tomorrow afternoon. We'll be wrapping up the community information gathering tool by the end of the month. So we're very excited about what will happen next. We're looking forward to the way that we can collaboratively implement the plan that we are currently making.
Oh, that sounds like a wonderful program. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Okay, unless Dean has anything further, I'll turn it over to Mayor Terrence Roberts to close us out.
Thank you. And I'm going to start referring to Dean as Mr. Dean, as Gracie said, Mr. Dean. Make you feel young, doesn't it, Dean, when they call you Mr. Dean?
Yeah.
But welcome, Gracie. I didn't mean to, but thank you for joining 10 at the top. I want to again thank Michael for his timely message, and also from the county updates. I think probably, you know, back during the Great Recession, one of the things that happened, we cut probably mental health a little bit too much. And I think some of the unintended consequences have surfaced. But, you know, it's good to see. I mean, you throw a pandemic on top of it, but it looks like a lot of good people working very hard to make sure that everybody stays fit mentally, and I think that's important. So Dean's put the next link to the next chat on April the 1st, and I hope you guys will enjoy us. Go out and I give everybody the rest of the day off and get some sunshine, and have a good weekend. Stay safe. Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.